What if I told you that the only being Zeus truly feared was his wife? She wasn't just a goddess, she was a throne, a storm, a legacy carved into the bones of Olympus. Today, on Decoding the Myth Olympus, we unveil the untold depths of Hera, the queen of the gods. From her dark beginnings inside the stomach of a titan, to the sacred temples built in her name across ancient Greece. This is not a story of a jealous wife. This is the rise of a woman who ruled marriage, motherhood, and vengeance. Can you imagine this? One of the greatest goddesses of Olympus, once a child swallowed alive by her own father. Hera, the name that would one day command respect across all Olympus, had a beginning drenched in tragedy. She was the daughter of Cronus, the Titan king who once ruled the cosmos, and Rhea, the mother of gods. It sounds majestic until you look closer. Cronus, terrified by a prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him, made a monstrous decision. He swallowed each of them at birth: Hestia, Demeter, Hades, Poseidon, one after another, consumed by their own father. And Hera was no exception. She didn't begin life in glory or light, but in the suffocating darkness of her father's stomach. And it was there she learned her first divine truth. Power is always born from betrayal. But destiny didn't forget her. Zeus, the youngest sibling, hidden away by their mother, returned years later to challenge Cronus. In a fierce act of rebellion, he forced Cronus to vomit up every child he had swallowed. And Hera, brilliant, scarred, and silent, emerged into the world once more. But freedom wasn't a coronation. According to some versions of the myth, Hera withdrew to the island of Euboea, where she was raised by Tethys, the ancient sea goddess, under the watchful care of the four seasons. There, surrounded by nature and ancient power, she grew, not just in beauty but in presence. And her beauty wasn't gentle. It wasn't the kind poets whispered about in gardens. Hera's beauty was commanding, chilling, regal. She didn't shine like the morning star. She stood like a storm on the horizon. Beautiful, yes, but also untouchable. This wasn't a goddess meant to dance or sing. Hera was made to rule. She didn't rise from love. She rose from the depths of a god's stomach, carved from silence, shaped by survival. Hera did not fall in love. She was conquered. But even that word conquered feels too simple for the dance of power that unfolded between her and Zeus. Zeus was the king of the gods, ruler of thunder, breaker of chains, the one who defeated Cronus and seized the heavens. He could have anything or anyone he desired, but not Hera. Not at first. She was the most beautiful goddess in existence, the living embodiment of dignity and majesty. Her presence alone bent the will of gods. And Zeus, drunk on power, wanted her, not just as a consort, but as his equal, his queen. But Hera resisted. Again and again she turned him away. She saw through the charm, the declarations, the thunderous promises. Hera wasn't impressed by lightning. She had been born in shadow. So Zeus did what gods often do when denied. He deceived her. Disguising himself as a shivering cuckoo bird, Zeus flew into a storm, battered by wind and rain. He landed near Hera, weak and pitiful. Compassion stirred in her, perhaps for the first time in an age. She took the bird gently into her robes, and that was when the trap closed. The cuckoo transformed, lightning flashed. Zeus stood before her, not broken but triumphant. In that moment, divine law was sealed. He claimed her, and Hera, outraged, cornered by shame and cosmic force, agreed to marry him. But don't mistake her submission for surrender. From that day forward, Hera would never forget the trick that made her queen. Their union became the most powerful marriage in mythology, and the most volatile. She sat beside him on Olympus, not beneath. Hera was more than a wife. She was a symbol of sacred marriage, the guardian of vows, the goddess of family, childbirth, and feminine strength. And while Zeus ruled the sky, Hera ruled loyalty. She was the protector of wives, the avenger of betrayal, and the quiet fire behind every oath ever spoken between man and woman. But how could such a goddess endure a husband like Zeus? Because even queens must sometimes burn slowly before they strike. And Hera, she was always watching. Hera doesn't need a throne to prove she's a queen. Her power is written in every vow, every childbirth, every storm of jealousy that sweeps through Olympus. As the wife of Zeus, Hera was never just a consort. She was the divine embodiment of marriage itself, its beauty, its loyalty, and its pain. She ruled over weddings, sacred unions, and the bonds of family, revered by mortals and immortals alike. Women prayed to her in whispers before they married, before they gave birth, and in moments of betrayal they cried out her name. Because if anyone understood love's wounds, it was Hera. But being the goddess of family didn't mean she had a perfect one. With Zeus, Hera bore a line of powerful children. Ares, the god of war, violent, chaotic, and as fierce as his mother's rage. Hebe, the goddess of youth and cupbearer of the gods, forever young, forever close to Olympus's heart. Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, who heard the screams of every mortal woman in labor. And Hephaestus, the god of fire and the forge, a creator, an inventor, and a wound Hera never healed from. Because in some versions of the myth, Hephaestus was Hera's child alone, born without Zeus, out of pride, out of revenge. But when she saw his body, crippled, imperfect, she cast him off Olympus in disgust. Her shame outweighed her love. Her pride came before her motherhood. But fate, as always, had a lesson in store. Years later, Hephaestus returned, not with vengeance, but with genius. He crafted a golden throne, dazzling and divine, and sent it as a gift to Hera. She sat on it with grace. But when she tried to rise, she was trapped, locked by invisible bonds. None of the gods could free her, not even Zeus. And it was only when Hera agreed to welcome Hephaestus back to Olympus, to honor him, to accept him as her son, that the throne released her. Power, pride, punishment. These were the tools Hera knew best. She was the protector of women, the mother of gods, the queen of divine order. But even the gods trembled when her wrath stirred, because Hera did not forgive easily. She could bless a hero like Jason, or she could drive Hercules into madness. She could anoint a marriage, or curse it until it withered. She was not a gentle goddess. She was a necessary one. No one holds a grudge like a goddess betrayed, and Hera? She was vengeance in a crown. She was the divine protector of marriage, and yet her own marriage was a battlefield. Zeus, the king of the gods, was also the king of affairs. Nymphs, mortals, even other goddesses. His appetite was endless, and each betrayal ignited a storm inside Hera that Olympus learned to fear. But Hera didn't strike Zeus. She struck what he loved, his lovers, his children. She turned her fury toward the symbols of his betrayal, and few suffered more than Hercules, the most famous of Zeus's illegitimate sons. Hera hated him not for what he did, but for what he represented, a living reminder of her humiliation. So she waited, and when the time came, she whispered madness into his mind. The great hero, strong enough to hold up the sky, was driven to slaughter his own wife and children in a blind rage. And yet, that wasn't enough. Hera orchestrated the 12 labors, pushing Hercules into impossible trials, testing his strength, breaking his spirit, trying to bury the stain he left on her pride. But Hera's vengeance didn't end with Zeus's bastards. Her wrath became cosmic, political, eternal. When the Trojan prince Paris was chosen to judge which goddess was the most beautiful, he made the worst mistake of his life. He chose Aphrodite over Hera and Athena. That single moment lit the fuse that would destroy a civilization. Hera never forgot. And when war broke out between the Greeks and the Trojans, she poured all her hatred into the battlefield. She manipulated gods, bent destinies, and made sure that Troy would fall in fire and ruin. Even after Troy burned, she hunted Aeneas, the Trojan survivor destined to found a new empire. Hera followed him across seas and storms, ensuring that no son of Troy would rise without suffering. But for all her wrath, Hera wasn't cruel without cause. She protected Jason, guiding him in his quest for the Golden Fleece. She inspired loyalty, punished infidelity, and defended sacred vows. Her fury wasn't madness, it was justice twisted by betrayal. Hera's temper wasn't wild, it was strategic. Her grudges weren't petty, they were eternal. She was not just a wife wronged. She was a queen who would not be ignored. Not all men earned Hera's wrath. Some earned her favor. And among them none stood taller than Jason. While most heroes feared her name, Jason bowed before it. Before setting sail for the Golden Fleece, he crossed a river, and an old woman called for help. Without hesitation, Jason lifted her across. That woman was Hera in disguise. In that moment of simple kindness, Jason won the loyalty of a goddess feared by all Olympus. Hera became his silent guardian. She watched over his ship, the Argo. She guided him through perils no mortal could face. And when deception, love, and betrayal threatened to unravel his quest, it was Hera's influence that helped him endure. She didn't protect him out of affection. She protected him because he showed her something rare in men. Respect without fear, humility without weakness. And in return, he carried her will across oceans and legend. Even kings must sleep. But when the king is Zeus and the queen is Hera, that sleep could cost him the heavens. There came a time when even Hera's patience shattered. After endless betrayals, lovers, and bastard sons, the queen had enough. Her marriage, built on trickery, had become a public humiliation, and Zeus, ever arrogant, thought no one would dare defy him. He was wrong. Hera plotted. She didn't strike alone. She whispered to Poseidon, god of the seas, and Athena, the goddess of war. She built a coalition inside Olympus. Among the very gods Zeus thought loyal. And one night, as the king of the gods lay asleep, they struck. They bound him in enchanted chains, impossible to break. For a moment, a glorious, terrifying moment, the king of Olympus was no longer in control. But power doesn't go quietly. Briareus, the 100-handed giant, loyal to Zeus, broke the bonds and freed the thunder god. The rebellion failed. And Hera? She paid the price. Zeus hung her from the sky in golden shackles, anvils tied to her ankles. Her screams echoed through Olympus, a warning to all who would challenge him. Only after she swore never to rebel again did he release her. But something had changed. Zeus may have won the battle, but Hera had shown Olympus one truth. Even gods bleed, and even thrones can shake. Long after myths faded into memory, Hera remained, not just in stories, but in stone, in prayer, in every home where a vow was made. Among all the Olympian gods, Hera stood as one of the most widely worshipped deities in ancient Greece. Her temples rose across the land, from the mountains of Argos to the island of Samos, majestic structures carved in marble, crowned in gold, where incense burned and hymns echoed. She was not the goddess of war, nor of harvest, nor of the underworld. Hera ruled over something far more personal, far more sacred: the family. Married women, especially those pregnant or longing for children, prayed to her with trembling hands and hopeful hearts. She was their protector, their advocate, their divine mirror. And in homes across Greece, alongside Hestia, goddess of the hearth, Hera was honored in domestic rituals. Together, they formed the spiritual foundation of the household, one guarding the fire, the other guarding the bond. Even her sacred animals carried meaning. The cow, a symbol of nurturing. The peacock, with feathers said to hold the eyes of Argus, her loyal servant, stood as a reminder: Hera sees all. Nothing is forgotten. To the Greeks, Hera was more than myth. She was the standard of loyalty, the power behind marriage, and the silent strength of every woman who bore the weight of family on her shoulders. She was not just the queen of Olympus, she was the queen of every home. Even gods need symbols, and Hera's were more than decoration. They were living echoes of her power, her pride, and her pain. Two sacred creatures walk in the shadow of the queen, the cow, gentle, maternal, steadfast, an emblem of fertility and motherhood. To the Greeks, it was a reflection of Hera's role as the protector of marriage and childbirth, strong, patient, enduring, like the goddess herself. But her second symbol is far more striking, far more unforgettable: the peacock. With its radiant feathers and piercing eyes, the peacock didn't just stand for beauty. It carried a story soaked in loyalty and death. Once, Hera had a servant named Argos Panoptis, Argos the all-seeing. A giant with 100 eyes, Argos was fiercely loyal, watching day and night, serving Hera's will with unwavering devotion. But Argos was killed, slain during a mission for his goddess. Hera, in her grief, took the 100 eyes of her fallen servant and placed them upon the tail of the peacock, so that his watchfulness would never fade and his loyalty would be remembered for eternity. Every time a peacock spreads its tail, it becomes a tapestry of memory and mourning, a reminder that Hera does not forget. She honors loyalty. She remembers every betrayal. Every eye watches, just like the goddess. Names change, myths evolve, but power like Hera's never disappears. In Roman mythology, Hera lived on, reborn as Juno, queen of the gods, wife of Jupiter, and the guardian of the Roman state. But while the names shifted, the essence remained. Juno, like Hera, was the goddess of marriage, childbirth, and the sacred bond of loyalty. She was honored in temples across Rome, prayed to by wives, queens, and emperors' mothers. She stood beside Jupiter, not as his shadow, but as his equal, his counterweight, his consequence. The Romans loved her, feared her, and respected her strength. They saw in Juno not just divine protection, but also divine retribution. She was beautiful, but not soft. She was regal, but not merciful. She was justice wrapped in elegance, vengeance cloaked in royal blue. In Hera's name, or Juno's, a warning still echoes through time. You may rule the heavens, but never forget the queen beside you. She was feared. She was worshipped. She was never forgotten. Whether as Hera in Greece or Juno in Rome, the queen of the gods remains one of the most complex, commanding figures in all mythology. Her love shaped heroes, her wrath toppled cities, and her name, still whispered across centuries, reminds us that power is not always loud, but it is never silent. If you enjoyed this journey into the divine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time here on Decoding the Myth Olympus, where legends come to life.